Hello, grade 5. How are you today? Our lesson today is talking about friction. What is friction? If I ask you to tell me that when you slide down on a slide, what happened? There will be a touch between your body and the slide, right? Or when a car moves on a road, what happened? There will be a touch between the car tire and the road. This touching between your body and the slide or between the car tires and the road arises what? Arises in a force called friction force. So again, what is the friction force? Friction force is a force between two surfaces when they touch each other. Like when you slide down on a slide, there will be a friction force between your body and the slide. Your body is a surface and the slide is another surface. So it's a force arises between what? Between two surfaces when they touch each other. Like when you rub your hands together. What happened? They are two surfaces. They touch each other, so there will be a force. It's called what? A friction force. Okay, this friction acts in a direction opposite to the direction of motion. So it causes what? It causes the object to slow down and stop. So friction force again acts in a direction opposite to the direction of motion. So it causes the object to slow down and stop. Okay, now we will talk about the types of friction. Number 1, we have friction between solid objects like the ball and the ground. Number 2, friction between solid object and air, like a bird when it flies in air. 3, we have friction between solid object and water, like fish when it swims in water. Let's start with the first type, friction between solids. When you ride a bicycle, there is a friction force between the tire of the bicycle and the road. So this friction force acts in the opposite direction of movement. Again, when you ride a bicycle, there is a friction force between the bike tires and the road. And we said this force acts in what? In the opposite direction of movement. Okay, when you stop pedaling during movement of the bike, what happens? The friction force increases, so the bike slows down until it stops. Again, we said we have two forces, movement force and friction force. When the movement force is larger than the friction force, the body will move. But when you stop pedaling, so the friction force will be larger than the movement force, so the body will stop. We have factors affecting the friction force. For example, number 1, the type of surface material. We have two types of surface material. We have rough surface and smooth surface. Rough surface like sand. When you move on a sand, the friction force between the rough surfaces will be increased. Again, the friction force increases between what? Between two rough surfaces. And the smooth surface, we have the friction force will decrease between the smooth surfaces. So when you try to push a ball on the sand, it will move for a short distance. But when you try to push this ball on the ground or on the ceramic, what happens? It will move for a large distance. So again, the friction force between rough surfaces increases and it decreases between the smooth surfaces. This is the first factor. Factor number 2, the speed of the body. When the body moves in a slow, what happens? The friction force decreases. So again, by decreasing the speed of an object, what happened? The friction force also decreases. But when you move or the object move fast, what happened? The friction force increases. Again, by decrease the speed of object, what happened? The friction force will decrease. But when you increase the speed of the object, the friction force also will increases. The third factor, the surface area of the moving object. For example, the large surface area. What happened? By increasing the surface area, the friction force increases. But by decreasing the surface area, the friction force will decrease. So we have three factors affecting on the friction force. We said number one, the type of surface material, and we said we have two types, rough surfaces and smooth surfaces. The factor number two is the speed of the object. Factor three, the surface area of the moving object. Okay, the second type of friction between solid object and air. And this type of friction is called air resistance. So what is the air resistance? It's a type of friction force result from what? Result from the movement of an object through air. So it's called air resistance. So again, when you run in open air, what happens? There is a friction force between you and the air. This friction force is called air resistance. And the direction of air resistance also acts in the opposite direction of movement of an object through air. So you can feel the air touch your or hit your face, right? When you run in the open air, you can feel what? You can feel the air hit your face, right? So this is called air resistance. And it acts what? It acts in the opposite direction of the movement. The factors affecting air resistance. Number one, the speed of a moving body. When you move or when you walk on the street, you cannot feel the air resistance, right? But when you move in a very high speed, what happens? You can feel the air resistance. And the second factor is called what? The surface area of a moving body. Okay, number one, we said by increasing the speed of a body that moves through air, what happens? The air resistance increases. When you run in the air, what happens? You can feel the air hit your face, right? But if you walk on the street, you cannot feel it, right? So by increasing the speed of a body, what happens? The air resistance increases. So the relation between the speed of a body and the air resistance is a direct relation. What is the meaning of the word direct relation? It's mean by increasing the speed, the air resistance increases. Or by decreasing the speed, the air resistance also decreases. We have many examples, like when you run fast in open air, or when a car moves at a high speed, or when you ride a bicycle at a high speed. In these cases, what happens? The friction force increases by increasing the speed of the object. The second factor is the surface area. Also, by increasing the surface area of the body, what happens? The air resistance increases. And also, the relation here is a direct relationship. The examples we have: trains, rockets, and new cars are designed in a streamlined shapes. Why they are designed in streamlined shapes? To what? To decrease the surface area. So the friction force will decrease, or the air resistance will decrease. So they will move in a high speed. Again, Again, the trains or rockets or new cars are designed in streamline shapes. Why they are designed in streamline shapes? To decrease the surface area. So the air resistance will decrease. So they will move at a high speed. Okay. We have also birds have streamline shapes, and birds stretch their wings on landing, and parachutist opens the parachute to land safely. Why? Why the birds have streamline shapes, or why the birds stretch their wings on landing, or parachutist opens the parachute to land safely? To make what? To decrease the surface area so the air resistance will decrease. Friction between solid object and water. This is the third type of friction. Friction between solid object and water, and this is called water resistance. And it's a type of friction force result from what? From the movement of an object through water, like the ship. And the direction of the water resistance also acts in the opposite direction of movement of the object. The factors affecting water resistance. We have the speed of the moving body and the surface area of the moving body. The first one, the speed. We said by increasing the speed or the surface area of a body that moves through water, the water resistance increases. So the relation here between the speed or the surface area of the body and the water resistance is a direct relation. Examples, we have fish have streamlined shapes. We said why? To decrease the surface area, so the water resistance decreases, so they can move in a high speed. Ships are designed in streamlined shapes also. Why? To decrease the surface area, so the water resistance decreases, so they can move in a high speed. Okay, I hope you can understand the lesson. Thank you, grade 5.